Good afternoon. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent. I just called myself out about saying my conscious dad. You're listening to the Inspirational Parent, our new show. If you're on Facebook Live, you just got the best treat from my face experience, my face reaction. So you're listening to our first broadcast of the Inspirational Parent. First, I kind of want to introduce my dad, Alex. We're both co-hosting the show, and I want to kind of give the listeners, whether you've listened to our show before, our old show before, or you're just joining us, this is your first ever experience with us, I want to kind of let them know what you're about, what we're doing here on the show, and what our main goal is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a transformational life coach. I've been a coach for over 23 years, and I have committed my life to help wake myself up to a higher level of consciousness such that I can be a better husband, father, son, brother, and just be a better leader for the world. And I embarked on my own conscious journey, like I said, about 25 years ago. And since then, I've been coaching other people into creating, the life of their dreams and really mastering their own power, personal power, and, really being more effective in their life and in their relationships. And I have also been on a journey of facilitating transformational trainings for teenagers and for parents. So I've been wanting for a long time to really make a bigger contribution in the world. And so recently I wrote a book called The Inspirational Parent. And I thought it was the right time to transition our show, My Conscious Dad, into the Inspirational Parent Radio Show. And I think that the timing's perfect. And, if you're just joining us, welcome to the show. The show is really going to be consisting of talking about different topics of how to become a more inspirational parent to your kids and how to be more conscious in that journey and really hooking the hearts of our sons and daughters such that we can become their advocate and be their mentor in life.
So for me, I guess I'm kind of wondering what the because I have a very small insight on it. I haven't read the whole book. I don't really know what's going on. So what is the Inspirational Parent? What does it mean to you? What does the whole book encompass without giving too much away? What's the whole gist of it?
The Inspirational Parent is the concept that inside of you there's a part that you can access where you can tap into interpersonally to become the inspirational parent for your kids. It seems to be this typical model of the controlling style parent that we adopt when we're young parents because it's the best that we know, and we just take all of our knowledge and wisdom in life and we think to ourselves, oh, I got this. How hard can it be to parent a child when they're little or tell them no and don't do this and kind of course correct them? But at a certain point, the controlling style parent model starts to die out and it starts to become kind of a roadblock in the next level of parenting when it comes to young teens and then teenagers and young adults. So I think the conscious parent realizes that we have to start creating a new style of parenting, a different model, more like a coaching style. And that's what I call the inspirational parent, is shifting you into and transitioning you from the controlling style parent model into the inspirational. Learn how to be inspirational. Learn how to help your kids access their own personal power by the tools that you have that you might not really realize that you have. And so the whole inspirational parent is about teaching you about all those inner quality tools that you might not have been taught or learned or accessed before.
So if we could go a little bit into the distinction of controlling style parenting, I know that you were saying when you're younger, as a young parent, that's all really because your parents were either controlling style parenting and two, because your kids do need to be controlled when they're younger. So what does that look like when they're young? Also, what does it look like when they get older and you don't make that switch?
Well, for me, and I can only speak from my own experience as well as the experience that I've had of coaching other parents. When I was a young man and I had your brother and then had you, obviously, and your sister, it was okay to default to the controlling style parent because it's really, I was kind of resorting back to just everything that I knew about my parents teaching me how to parent by watching them, and then taking some of my own beliefs and my own commitment to help raise you guys to be extraordinary human beings. And I just came in and just did the best I could. And doing the best you can from the controlling style parent is good up to a certain point. And that pivotal moment is when your son or daughter starts to realize that they have their own voice. For some kids, it's 3 or 4 years old when they learn for the very first time the word no. And so when you tell them, hey, go clean up your room or clean up your mess, and they look at you and they go, no. And they start to realize, oh, I have a voice. I can use my voice. And then they start realizing at a certain point, I have a mind. I have my own thoughts. So then they get this crazy idea, our kids, that now that they have a mind and they realize they have a voice, that they can start thinking for themselves, which...
Crazy, right?
It's kind of one of those things that as we grow up and develop, it's like at a certain point, as a young man, as a young woman, I want to start making my own choices. I want to start living my own life. And that's usually the time of the preteen or the teenagehood.
But sometimes that, I think, comes out to play when they're younger, like you said, 3 or 4, when they're trying to put their own shoes on and you're in a rush. So you're like, no, let me do it. And you're putting it
That's
on.
Right. And they go, no, I want to do it.
Yeah. So
no,
sometimes it's going to be a lot sooner than you think, where you have to let go of that. You don't have to, where you need to consider maybe that you need to let go of that controlling style parenting, or slowly wean them off, even if it is at 3 or 4.
I agree.
So that they can kind of get used to doing their own things and not being told what to do or babied all the time, even if they are a baby.
That's right. You can actually learn the inspirational parenting model right off the bat. And the inspirational parenting model is more about asking them questions. It's about helping you draw some of the answers out from within them while you're putting answers and giving them solutions, back and forth. So it's not about raising my kids and then me trying to teach them everything just from one direction or one dimensional, where your mom and your dad are just giving you answers rather than asking open-ended questions to get you to find out and seek your own solutions and find your own answers. And so that's what the inspirational parent is learning how to become more of a coaching style parent, where you're asking open-ended questions, getting the child to decide for themselves what's right, what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what's more effective for me, rather than me telling you how to live your life. Because what you don't want is to hang on to that controlling style parent for so long, such that your kids don't have a mind for themselves. They can't think for themselves. They're gun shy, they're fearful because they're always looking at you for every answer. Or, God forbid, they stop looking to you because they put you in a box that you don't care or you just want it your way. And then they start going seeking advice from their peers. And that's, as a conscious parent, that's not what I want. I want my kids to keep going to me, keep coming to me, keep asking for my advice, keep bringing me into their life and letting me be a part of that. And so the inspirational parent model is help for you to design a way about you that you can reinvent yourself such that your kids keep coming to you and seeking for your advice.
Yeah, and I kind of want to touch a little bit on what you said about once we stop, us as kids, once we stop coming to you, it's not because we just decided we're going to figure it out on ourselves, on our own. It's because we're going somewhere else and we're finding it somewhere else. So for some kids, they're lucky and they have coaches or teachers or aunts and uncles that are there for them and can support them and steer them kind of in the right direction. But some don't, and they do go to their peers, or sometimes they go to peers that maybe are not healthy for them and get into certain things, drugs or whatever that looks like for them. And it's not your fault as parents. It's not, I don't think anybody can really pinpoint one thing that a parent did or does, but there is a point where somebody could look at you and say, your kid's in this hole, your kid's in this mess, and what are you doing now? So it's not too late to just switch or start with the process of switching into this coaching style parenting, because teens will start to respond to it. They'll first, we always talk about this first, they'll be like, oh, this is weird. Mom's being weird. Dad's being, like asking questions and not telling me what to do. This is weird. But they're going to take that weirdness and they're going to sit with it. And they're going to, every time you do it, they're just going to keep thinking, oh, mom's different now. Oh, mom's changed so much. So I think as long as you are just trying, you can never be wrong. There's no right or wrong way to parent. We say that all the time. But as long as you're trying and you're not just sitting there doing nothing, because I won't say that anybody's parenting wrong, but if you're sitting there doing nothing, I'll call you out and say you're parenting wrong. But as long as you're trying, I think most people can at least consider that there are other ways to parent, that obviously this way's not working right now. Even if it used to work, now there's other ways that I can grow, reinvent myself, to get to.
And I think that's a great epiphany to have as a parent, is to stop for a minute, get real with yourself and say, all right, there's obviously something that I'm doing that's, and I don't like to use the word right or wrong. I like to use effective or ineffective, because it gives it more, there's no judgment in it. There's no bad, nasty flavor. It's not, a harsh word. And you just look at yourself and go, okay, obviously based on how I'm parenting, it doesn't seem to be as effective as I want it to be, or it's not, or I'm not creating the results that I want.
Or as effective as it was 2 years ago.
Right. And so that's a huge awakening for a parent, to be willing to have a conversation, whether it's a self conversation with themselves, to really kind of look at that and to own it. I think it's a hard pill to swallow sometimes for parents, to just stop and go, well, maybe there could be something more that I could be doing, or there's other tools that I can learn within my own parenting style that can help my kids do a 360. I don't think most parents think like that. I don't think on a level like, my son or daughter, if I cause a shift in me, then it'll cause a shift in my son or daughter. They don't think like that. They think like, what's wrong with them? Why aren't they? There's nothing wrong with me or my parenting. There's something wrong with my son or daughter. And a lot of times I'll get phone calls from people wanting me to work with their son or daughter, like fix them. And I don't know, and I'm figuring out how to master this in a very loving, compassionate way. And that's how to tell the parents that there's nothing wrong with your son or daughter. They're just a byproduct of your parenting. Because that's the reality of it, is our sons and daughters learn certain behaviors and certain ways about themselves and how to interact in the world by who? Who did they learn that from?
Our parents, watching our parents.
They learned that, yeah. My kids learned everything about how to show up in the world by watching me, or by mimicking my model, or picking up all the bad habits that I do. So I get to stop for a minute and take responsibility for that and say, all right, if I'm going to cause a course correction, I need to first figure out how to cause it over here, such that I'm modeling it and I'm projecting it over there. And I think that's a really challenging pill for parents to swallow. And it's a process you have to go through.
Right. And there's I remember watching a video, or like a TED Talk, I think, about a guy. He's a motivational speaker now, but he used to be a chemist. So he's a very analytical, sciencey kind of guy. And he is explaining to parents the idea of, if you were to, let's say, the idea of your kids watching you kind of thing, and being the example out in the world. And he gave the example, if you took a bug out of a certain ecosystem, all of a sudden now mice are having more of a challenge to feed, and then the birds are having more of a challenge because there's less mice, and it's so on and so on, and it goes up the food chain. And that one bug that, let's say there used to be thousands, there's millions crawling around in the rainforest. If that one bug is gone, it changes the entire ecosystem, something so small. So if you're having challenges as a analytical parent trying to figure out what we're talking about, there's other ways that I'm going to try to learn, because you and I, we both speak the same language for the most part. So, I don't speak to analytical brains very well as I would like to. So that's one thing I want to practice too. So getting involved in our Facebook videos, and even sending us emails or giving us a call saying, I don't know what you were talking about on air, but I kind of like the concept, explain more. I will go on for 10 years explaining the same thing different ways until I get it. So one of the things I really would like to adopt in this show is getting new perspective and different feedback, and whether that looks like bringing show guests on, or especially having the audience interact with us on Facebook, so we can in live time come up with new scenarios, because I think, like I said, we speak the same, so we might be saying the same thing over and over again.
No, absolutely, and feedback is good. We need feedback to figure out, am I being effective or not, whether it's in our parenting or on the radio show. And so feedback is important, to have you send us an email or a post saying, hey, I didn't understand what you meant by this one word, or I wish you would elaborate a little bit more on that one saying that you use. What do you mean by that? So it causes a new awareness in us, so that we either slow down and not make assumptions that you understand what we're talking about. But I had to learn just by listening. When I was being coached or mentored or wanted to get to the next level, you hang around your coaches long enough, you start to pick up on words. It's a new teaching. And it was funny because when I started doing radio about 3 or 4 years ago, there was a lot of words I was using, and some of the feedback I was getting was, your words are too big or they're too confusing. And so I started to kind of take that feedback, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to figure out how to find different words for people to understand. And some I could change, but other words are just distinctive. Those words I keep using because I just have to teach you this word because the word means something. And I want to teach you that that word has a different meaning than what maybe you've been considering it. And so a lot of this show is we're going to talk about certain distinctions, and we're going to really elaborate on those such that you have a different learning or different meaning for different words.
I like that you said that because I can kind of identify in the sense that if I'm learning, like, for example, I'm trying to learn Spanish, and there's words in Spanish that are not as beautiful to me. They don't translate as well as the words in English. And so if I, for example, my boyfriend speaks Spanish. So if I say, how do I say this in Spanish? And he says, oh, you can't really say that. You would really say this. And I say, well, I don't want to say that. I want someone to know this word.
Right.
He's like, you can't just make up a word. And I was like, well, I'll teach them in English and explain it better. But I get so stuck on words sometimes because I feel like they're so important. And I can also relate to you. When I started doing this show, you had told me years ago, you had told me, what I want you to do is I want you to try to dummy down the things that I'm saying so that everyone can understand, because I'm speaking at such a higher level that people aren't understanding me. And I was having a hard time with it too, because I grew up with you all my life, so I speak the way you speak. And I even remember after one show you saying, you're supposed to be the normal one, you're supposed to speak to the masses, you're supposed to he's like, but you're coming in here like you know everything. So I was like, I had to sit and consider. Yeah,
because I think one of the greatest qualities you have is that if I say something, you can take it and then say it in a different way that other people go, oh, it's like, some people can hear me, some can't. Some people can hear you, and some can't. So it's if we say it in different ways, we're hoping that it lands to somebody where they go, oh, that makes sense now. So, I think that's the value of the show, is that we're just going to talk about different ideas and concepts and hopefully learn and grow, including myself. I'm here really with the intention to keep learning and keep figuring out how to be a more inspirational parent.
Right, and I'm super excited about the Facebook idea when we started it, just because we were getting live interactions from people asking questions and asking us to elaborate on certain concepts. So if you have a question, what's the saying, if one person asks, 10 people were thinking it, or something like that. So
Absolutely.
If you have a question, just ask. We'll probably call you out on air and say thanks for the question, but we're not gonna make you feel bad for asking a question. So.
Never.
So we welcome it.
Yeah.
One of the things I also wanted to go over was a story in your book, and I'm not going to go into too much detail. It's the very, very beginning. It's the first story you tell, and it's a story about a mother who gives you a call, and she says, Alex, I can't control my son. So I want to get into that story. For me, there was a lot of little golden nuggets that I wanted to pull out and just go over those ideas. So it's not really about the story. It's more about some of the things that you said in response to her. So the first thing that you told her was, did you ever consider that maybe you never had control of him? So if you were to tell that to a parent, most people, I think, maybe 80% of parents would say, what are you talking about? Of course I've had control of him. So I kind of want you to go into the idea that maybe there's a possibility that you never had control of your kids, or maybe you've lost control a long time ago and you're just seeing it now.
Yeah, and I think that's a very challenging pill to swallow for parents. Is, we could be living in some illusions. And if I'm living in a certain illusion for a very long time, and then somebody points something out to me from a different perspective, and that could be challenging for me to wrap my mind around that concept. So a lot of times, I'm not always the best coach for certain parents or certain people, because I see things unlike the way they see it. And there's a reason for that. Because one, I'm not attached to any of the things that they're holding on to. I don't have their belief system, or I don't have their fears or their doubts or their insecurities. So it frees me up to be able to see things really for what they are. And a lot of times that's valuable for some people if they see value in it, and it's not valuable for other people because they want to find somebody that sees it the way they see it. So a lot of times I will open up a possibility for parents that the way that they currently are seeing it might not necessarily be the way it really is. And that's a challenge for a lot of people and parents specifically, because we've worked really hard at helping our kids win and trying to teach them and help them grow, that we've created these concepts and these ideas and these beliefs that are ours. And a lot of times they're going to go, what do you mean I never had control? What do you mean I'm not in control of my kid? And so it's very delicate in the very beginning when I explain those things, because a lot of times I have to really explain it in more detail to the point to where most of them go, okay, I can see now what you're talking about. I can see now that at a certain point I was living in the illusion that I actually have control over my kids, but they can actually they have a voice of their own. They make their own choices. If they wanted to, they can choose something else. And then I have to now figure out, okay, what do I do next?
Well, I think anybody, if you're going to giving advice to a friend or brother, sister, whoever, they want your advice and they'll ask for your advice, but they'll ask for it expecting an answer. And I find that with my friends who are on a conscious journey to try to figure this whole life thing out, they'll ask me or they'll start venting to me and they'll say, what should I do? And I say, it depends. Do you want me to agree with, do you want me to say what you want to hear, or do you want me to give you the truth? She's like, I want to hear, she gets mad. I want to hear what I want to hear. So then I'll tell her a little bit but because I said that, later she'll come back. So what do you really think? And then I have to, that's when I get the opportunity to just lay it all out there and say, this is what it looks like from the outside, that you haven't considered, because you're in the inside and you're swimming around in it, you live in it. And I realized that before I would have just jumped in and said, no, you're wrong, this, and really just gave it to her, because I was either annoyed that she was venting, or I thought it was dumb, the reason why she, was upset. But even though I know that she's open to learning and open to people being honest with her, sometimes we're not. So even when someone signs up and they say, or in your case, they pay you to coach them, there could be one little thing that you say that could just kind of tag them for them to never come back, or to say, oh, my friend, or oh, Alex says this and that, and it's not necessarily true, because they're not in that right space. So it's like you have to keep continuously being in that space to make that decision that maybe some of the things that people are saying to you are true.
And what's amazing is that every time I get a new consult for the very first time, and I meet with parents, or I meet with couples, or I meet with just individuals, I will flat out tell them, this is how it's going to go. I've already been down this road 1,000 times. And I'm going to say some things that you don't see it that way. And that's the gift I'm going to give you. But you might not even see that as a gift. So you have to really be open-minded. You have to hear that you just know I'm on your team from day one. And that I'm not trying to get you to see something because I want to hurt you, or I'm trying to get you to see something because you can't see it at the moment. And you can't see it because you're in it. And so I can explain that till the cows come home for a whole hour. And then the next session, or I don't get a call back. Just some people, they want to be coached or they want help, but they're not willing to be open enough. They're not willing to open themselves up, or they're not even willing to be wrong about how they see something, such that they can learn. And so that's just common.
Yeah, and that's something I want to actually quote something specifically from your book when we get back from the break. Right. Stay tuned for more of The Inspirational Parent right here on your hometown station, KHTS.